The trunk-based development is related to this idea of continuous integration. If people are working on their own feature branch, and then obviously that is not continuous integration. You can call it once in a while integration, but it's not continuous for sure.
Procognita, GetAgile podcast. Is your team integrating continuously or just running a CI server? Interview with Terry Yin.
Hi, and welcome to GetAgile podcast. I'm Tomasz Wykowski from Procognita, and today with me is Terry Yin from Singapore. So first question, who is Terry?
Okay, who is me?
Who is you?
Okay, I'm Terry Yin. I'm from Singapore. Thank you for having me here in Poland, Warsaw.
Thanks. Bit more context on Terry. So Terry is a developer, I know that, but our audience don't. So you work with more multi-team product development mostly, and you show them how to code.
I do write code as a hobby on small project, but professionally I always work in a large-scale software development as a developer.
Cool. And you're here in Warsaw, which you already mentioned. You're here in Warsaw for the Agile by Example conference. So we say hi to organizer of Agile by Example. And you just get a workshop. And tomorrow you're going to have a talk on software development as well. Hopefully it will be ready by the time you see this podcast. The recording should be ready. So hopefully you will see the recording as well under the recording, under the podcast. So here's the thing. Coming back to your workshop today, one sentence you have started with was, I'm gonna read this one. People do integration tests because they don't want to integrate, which is awesome. Okay, let's go back to the story. So share the story. What do you have in mind?
I think in a more general context, continuous integration sounds simple. But it's actually a very difficult developer practices. My friend says, so technical excellence is to support continuous integration rather than continuous integration is part of technical excellence. So it can be very subtle. Now, for example, sometimes people confuse when they have a CI system, for example, they have a CI server. They think they are doing continuous integration already. But continuous integration can be, in fact, very subtle. Only developers themselves know that whether they are continuously integrating or not. For example, if you have a backend service, and if you are doing integration test, which typically means you're testing part of the system without integrating it from the part that is needing it, well, this is not really integrated.
Yeah, so I think that Craig Larman said this one, the continuous integration is about integrating continuously, right?
That's him? Okay. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, so we get this one. So most of the cases, there was this magic triangle in testing, the concept of a lot of unit testing, a bit of integration testing, and a few of end-to-end testing, and you're saying it's just a wrong approach, right?
Yeah, I think so what you are talking about is like a pyramid about the layout of testing. The traditional recommendation is because unit tests are cheap to have, fast to run, you can have a lot of them.
And a bit of integration.
The end-to-end or system test is so expensive, so slow to run, very costly to maintain. And once they fail, you need to do a lot of debugging. So it's typically recommended not to have too many of those.
And you're saying it's just 20th century idea.
I think in a way, my ideal layout for test is completely remove the integration test. So it might look like hourglass in a way, like a lot of end-to-end test with a lot of unit test.
And why is that? Why you want to get rid of those?
Because of feedback quality. Okay, so actually, my recommendation or my approach is not exactly a static hourglass shape. When, let's say, me and my team is new to a domain, okay, we need to deliver, and we need to get feedback, okay? But we do not understand the structure very well. We do not understand the technology we are using very well yet. Yet we still need to deliver. At that moment, I would rely on more on end-to-end test, because end-to-end tests gave me very high quality feedback, okay, allow me to make progress, and then I get some time to understand the system while I'm delivering, okay? And after a while, me and my team get familiar with the technology. We know how things work beneath. I will still use end-to-end test to just document the user requirement, but then I will switch to writing more unit tests.
But what you define as unit test is not what most books, again, I believe 90-20s or whatever,
yeah, that's
define as a unit test. And
yeah,
this is my discovery from today, so I'm trying to dig into this one. What is the difference?
I don't find it common, no, but typically people think, what is a unit test? When people talk about unit test, then there's a question like, what is a unit for unit test? And people quite often find the so-called unit in the production code, in the code under test. It could be a small part of the, a small unit of the production code, could be a service, could be a library, could be a class, could be a method, could be part of a method. Anyways, this unit seems to be invariably coming from the system under test. But for me, a unit test simply means a small unit of behavior, a small unit of test. It has very little to do with the structure of your production code. Actually, the unit tests need to be as insensitive to the structure of the production code as possible. So if you rely on the internal structure of the production code, you have too much dependency, then it will become very sensitive to structural change.
And as a consequence, you have a lot of tests, and any change into your code means that you need to change.
Yeah, so in the end of the day, the test, I'm not sure if the kind of unit test is protecting the behavior or not, but at least it's very sensitive to structural change. Therefore, when you change the structure, you will have to change the test.
And people are complaining about the cost of change in this case for the code. And in your case, what the consequences of this one is that you need to have the whole environment running for every single test, because the idea of the previous idea of the unit test was you have just a small part, like you have your library, what you say, like your component and whatever, and you just test this part of the system. What you're saying, you test the whole system. Yeah. With some boundaries, I know.
Yeah.
So few things here, how we can do it. There's one thing, and the second thing is like, what has happened that we can change the approach from testing the code level or the module level to the whole system level?
I'll start with my speculation, the general level of speculation. In our industry, when we have some good practices, we want to make it easier to follow so that it's prescriptive. Developers can have a simple rule to follow. So then we need to downgrade it. So unit tests is like that. The common unit test practice has been downgraded to a level. It's just a simple mapping between your production code to your test. So there is a one-to-one mapping.
So let me stop you. What you're saying is like, this unit test was designed as the way you prescribe it, and it was modified?
I think so. I think so. However, I don't have evidence, because in every book you can find that is talking about unit tests. I mean, the unit is a small unit of production code.
Well, yeah, because one of the conversation we just had before recording is like the cost of having the whole system running and testing end to end, or like even inside, like testing a small test inside the whole system was pretty expensive, like 10, 15 years ago. That's why we test a small part of the code, because it was cheaper to have just a backend running than the whole front end, backend, and the database running for every single test. And that was my assumption, that the cost of testing goes down.
I think that might be a one of the reason. Like in the past, the computers are not so fast. If you involve things like a database, okay. I do recommend you actually use the real database in your unit test, okay. But in the past, probably using the real database, it's the same database as your production. Not that exactly instance
on
of
production. Just not a recommendation for testing on production database,
but
ladies and gentlemen.
the same type of database or a high fidelity simulation of that database. In the past, this is just too costly, too slow. In the modern computer, it's already fast. But I don't think that's a major concern. Even in the past, if your code is not touching database, like 20 years ago, just test if everything is in memory, even if you are executing a lot of source code, doesn't really take a lot of time. So we could have write the more end-to-end type of unit test like 20 years ago.
I remember like 20 years ago we have killed the database because we find that the cost of setting the environment for testing was pretty high, and there was nothing in the database that explained that this kind of cost. So we decided to move the basically static data from database to backend, and that is why I was surprised with what you were saying. But the consequence of that is like we're changing the whole system, because the way we start to test the environment impact the whole system of software development, I would say, right?
Yeah. So just for the topic of doing unit testing with against the real database or involve a real database, you see, especially in a very legacy project, the database is not an external dependency. It's right at the core of your business logic. And quite often, where do you put a certain constraint, whether in your source code or in your database? That is a decision. People change their mind frequently, okay? But no matter where you put it, or like whatever database structure you want to have, it doesn't really affect the external observable behavior. So you want your test to be helpful, to support this, like when you change your mind, you want to restructure. You want your test to be supportive for that, rather than being like inhibiting that from happening.
Hopefully the user doesn't care where you store the data, as long as it's safe. So
yeah,
it shouldn't impact this one, right? So okay, but the consequence of this, like if you move from let's test the code to let's test the behavior, there are a lot of consequences into how the software needs to be done, right? And let's talk about those. So like engineering practices change.
Before we talk about this, like how do you test the system, we need to know what you're testing. And what I mean is you need to have a deterministic versioning. And because before you have a deterministic versioning, talking about the automated test doesn't make sense, because when you say your test pass or fail, you don't know what you're talking about, because there's no clear versioning. So if a system is composed of multiple parts, you wish they are at least in the same repository.
Okay.
Together with the test.
Yeah. So there's more into this one, because the deterministic environment is basically there is more into this one. What you expect developers to have, what you expect from the engineering constraints, like something you mentioned already, like having monorepo, having limited number of branches or no branches at all, so like trunk development, right?
I mean, I'm not trying to go extreme, I mean, saying monorepo is an extreme. The oneness, I guess, after that is zero. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So, and a trunk-based development again is asking for extreme. I don't want to go extreme. What I'm asking for is deterministic versioning. It seems the easiest way to achieve deterministic versioning is single repo and without the branching, because I mean, branching is not really related to deterministic. You can do branch, and in each branch, as long as the test and what they are testing is in the same version, it's still deterministic. Okay, if you detach these two, allow them to vary separately, then that's what I call not deterministic. But then the trunk-based development is related to this idea of continuous integration. If people are working on their own feature branch, and then obviously that is not continuous integration. You can call it once in a while integration, but it's not continuous for sure.
All right, so let's stop for a second on this continuous integration. Mm-hmm. What is the value? So everybody talks about the continuous integration, and what you already mentioned, like having a CI server is not a continuous integration. So what is the business value for having a CI rather than having a CI server?
I mean, there are two kind of business value we're talking about. Okay, one is from the cost perspective, the other is from the value we create. I guess the value we create is probably a higher priority. Let me talk about that first. We write code to solve a problem for the user. That is the value, or presumed value we're going to provide to our customer. Okay, we want to quickly get feedback from the integrated system. So you will only be able to get the high quality feedback from user perspective after the whole system is integrated. Doesn't have to be complete, by the way. You can, from the very beginning, you continuously have an integrated environment and getting feedback from the user value perspective. That's one side, okay? On the cost side of value is this concept of WIP, which called work in progress. Now, if you create something and it is not integrated, which means it is not used, okay, you put it there. That's called the inventory. So theoretically, the WIP will just keep generating waste, okay, cost money. Okay, and there is a whole dynamic in software I can explain, like why if you design some code but that is not integrated, that will generate cost. But that's the fundamental principle.
All right, so what I'm hearing is like if anybody would try to convince the business for going into this continuous integrations, like first of all, ask them if they care about having a feedback fast, so working
That's
software.
First, yeah.
This crazy concept of working software at the end of every iteration, every day, every anything. Mm-hmm. And the second is like, what are the costs of feature not being delivered? So just, halfway done all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if they don't know the answer for those two questions, then probably the continuous integration is not the problem anymore. And yet.
Yeah, are you talking about the awareness in the organization?
Well, the one of the things is like, because if we talk about continuous integration, and this is the concept well known, and every company now will tell you they have a continuous integration. And what you're saying, just if you have a continuous integration environment doesn't mean you have a continuous integration.
It can be much more subtle than that.
So the question is, how the thing is like, if we talk about this but we don't do it, then what is the reason behind that? And one of the things is like we don't see the value, and that's why I asked you the question about the value. So how do we convince? Because we need to convince both, let's say, people who do it, like engineers, yeah, but also people who found all those testing environments. Usually it's a separate business unit or something like that, right? Yeah. So how do we get to those people, right?
Yeah, I think I do agree. I don't know how to answer this question, by the way, but I do agree that the awareness in the organization for the value of continuous integration is very, very important. I mean, you cannot expect the people make a right decision without even knowing the value of it. They will certainly optimize for something else rather than continuous integration.
All right, but you're working with the software developers
Yep.
of multi-team product development environment, and you promote those ideas. So I believe you have some arguments or some question you ask those people so they can see the value of these ideas.
That's where actually I suffer more because there's a lot of frustration. When you just look at things from one particular development team, right? You might draw the conclusion that it's not in their interest to integrate their software continuously. So these people are in a way bad that they don't do continuous integration. And then you try to help them to do it, okay? But that's not very useful. It's because the organization is structured in such a way. I mean, it's not in their interest to continuous integrate.
Yeah, we're coming back to this sentence from the very beginning. They do integration tests because they don't want to integrate, right?
Yeah.
So basically, there is a value of not integrating.
Yeah, because
in the
like, for
organization.
example, the team is responsible for only this part of the software. And of course, they would rather do integration tests rather than end-to-end tests because I mean it's none of their business. So it's in the organizational structure. So I think the problem is much more complicated when we put it in a large-scale software development.
And we get to the what is the goal for the team, probably a conversation in this case.
The goal of
The goal of the team, because you know, if what you're saying, if our goal is to develop our part of the system, then you know the integration is not much of our problem.
Then it's I mean, I don't think setting continuous integration as a goal will help, right? Because in the end of the day, continuous integration is just the practice, the approach. Let's say if the team is responsible for providing customer value, okay, and then they need to receive end-to-end the feedback to see actually the customer value is delivered. Then of course it is in the team's own interest to continuous integrate already.
Yeah, this is what I had in mind when I was saying about the goal, because if your goal is to develop a component, then you don't have an end-to-end value in mind.
Yeah.
So basically what I had in mind is like, if you structure your organization down, you reward developing of the separate components without the need of integration, then you don't integrate. But if you create the organization in the way that you have end-to-end teams, then you need to reward the fast feedback, which means that you need to reward the continuous integration.
Let's say, on the other hand, if you ask the team, you need to do continuous integration, okay, that's one. But secondly, you also need to, in the next 6 months, deliver this whole component. Okay, then the team will obviously don't care about continuous integration because this whole bunch of work is theirs, right? It's not going anywhere. So they would rather to create a stable feature branch so that they can just concentrate on developing their component and then so that they can make more progress.
So let me ask you this one. What we would so if people would like to get more into this like a high quality software and fast feedback, which helps to build a high quality, what would you recommend? So when you go in the organization, you see they have a huge problem with this one. What do you usually recommend for those people?
I think first, the decision maker need to be fully aware and be aware and educated in how continuously delivering software works. Okay, I think without that, it's unlikely they will create an organizational structure that is supporting that. On the other hand, I think a team need to be given both the responsibility, which team already have, of doing the work, but also the authority of making decisions. So meaning these decision making need to on how to deliver customer value need to be given completely to the team, so that you don't really use your process or management architecture to absorb the authority and eventually only give the responsibility to the team.
So what kind of decision you have in mind? Like, can you give some examples? It's like what most of the teams are missing. What kind of decision abilities they are missing?
So having authority, meaning you have the power of decision making. So and then it's for the good of overall outcome. If team is only given the responsibility of making things work, let me give one example. Okay, I mentioned the continuous integration can be very subtle. So a team can do everything seemingly right. They have a trunk-based development on single repository. They make very small commit and push continuously. Everything they create is used already, and you can get end-to-end feedback immediately. Are they doing continuous integration?
I hope so.
I mean, chances are they just hate each other. They don't want to talk to the other team. They make a redundant system, meaning the system is not cohesive. So actually the functionality is not integrated. So in the end of the day, yes, both works, but not in the integrated way. Okay. So and then this is lead to a huge problem in the future, because the change starts to diversify, and the system will become very hard to maintain, because the same idea has two duplicated implementation. So because teams hate each other, they don't want to talk to each other, they just invent their own solution. So this is when a team is only given the responsibility of like completing the behavior of the code. Okay, but team should have the authority to decide, you know what, we need to, at this moment, we need to slow down and make sure the system is well integrated and cohesive.
So what I'm hearing is like a level of relation between teams impact the quality of the code.
Again, I wouldn't, when we observe this kind of behavior from the team, we easily draw the conclusion is the team they want. It's either a human nature or nature of the engineer that they want, or this behavior of this team that they want to do this. But actually, if you look at how the power is distributed, how the organization is structured, how their bonus is planned, right? It's not like they want it. It's the organization forced them to think like that way.
So don't fix it on the team level. Fix it on the organizational level.
This is exactly a lot of my frustration comes from, because I focus on the team level a lot, but then a lot of problem is actually not really originated from the team.
All right. So to sum it up, so what we said is like continuous integration is basically something we need to have a fast feedback. To have a fast feedback, you need to know that you need to have a fast feedback on the organizational level. Yeah. Because if you don't have this one, you don't change the organization. The other thing you said, like having like a one, source of truth in this case, to have this feedback is something that is important. So like maybe not one mono repo, but like at least a limited number of repo.
I think if you can achieve deterministic build, I don't really care whether it's mono repo or not.
Then the third thing we said is like end-to-end testing plus the unit testing on the business level. This is important. Are we missing anything from this, like a continuous integration perspective? So those three things. Anything else we should add to this one, or should we add anything to those 3 points that we are missing? So.
What are the three points? Deterministic.
The 3 points were deterministic environment, end-to-end testing plus unit testing focus on the business side, and the third I had in mind was willingness to get a fast feedback. Because if you don't care about the fast feedback, then you don't change the structure, right?
Yeah. I think I would see it this way. We have the infrastructure level of supporting continuous integration, for example, deterministic build, which typically means a single repo, and a trunk-based development. On top of that, the developers can start to do solution-level continuous integration using practices like test-driven development and even end-to-end test driven development, sometimes called ATDD. And then once we have that, we can have, again, continuously the business level of continuous integration, which means we continuously get feedback from the user. If we can afford, we also continuously deliver, and so that we can continuously get higher quality feedback. If that is possible, we can also start to do A/B testing. Those are, I can see there is a dependency, a stack of continuous integration.
Which led me to an observation which is often, I believe, forgotten in the Agile environment, that if you want to have a fast feedback, you want to do an A/B testing, if you want to have a business validation, you need to have a right environment, engineering environment, so right testing environment, all this stuff, right way of creating the software. And by the way, something we need to mention at the very beginning, or I want to mention at the very end of this conversation, is that you're running a 5-day course for the developers who want to learn about this one. So that's the moment for advertising, and the course is named.
It's called the Less in Action.
Less in Action, and what you do on this one?
Well, it's certainly not in action, but in action actually means no action. But here, Less in Action is a developer course to show people how large-scale Scrum actually works. It's a 5-day workshop, and this 5-day is one sprint. Okay, we get let's say 15 people and divided into 3 teams. They will be running one sprint together. So it's not a simulation, because 5 days is a minimum length of one sprint, and then they will be together adding new features on top of an existing product. Okay, this product is built by the previous classes.
So this is the sandbox with the dummy functions, like a real life product.
Yeah, and the 3 team will work on different but related user-centric product backlog items during the sprint. So it's they just need to deliver the user value, and then they need to prepare the code base so that my next class can continue on their work.
Cool.
Yeah.
And if the people want to reach to you to ask about this class, how they do it?
They can find me on LinkedIn.
That's easy way, because you can find a link to Terry LinkedIn under the recording. So thank you very much for this conversation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to us, and subscribe, because the next episodes are coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
To learn more, visit procognita.com/getagile.